So without that, let's get right into USGA Tournament Management. So what we're going to do today is build a kind of a quick event. So what I have done here is everybody should have received a copy of this spreadsheet. And this is what we're going to build our event on. I have found that, and through all the seminars we've done so far, is that if you're able to create a spreadsheet and lay out as much information as you can in here, it will save you time in building your event. And what I mean by that is that not only do we have names, we have indexes here, it could be GIN numbers. I already know what my teams are here, so I've already listed them by the team ID. I already know what people are going to play, what tees they're going to play at the golf course, so I've already got this listed out. I've got some divisions that I'm going to create here. We're going to do a Pro-Am here. I know what teams these people are from, so this is basically their affiliation, gender. I've also included a thing for net skins. Now, I recognize that skins is something that usually happens the day of, but we'll kind of show you how to work around that. It doesn't need to be in your spreadsheet. And then there's also a social aspect to this, which we'll show you really quickly, where I have people here showing up for dinner. All I'm trying to point out here is if you can get in the spreadsheet and kind of put this information in a sorted way, I will show you how you can easily build your events quicker by doing it through this format. Doesn't mean you have to do this, but you can manually bring people in and start building teams and whatnot, just like you did in TPP. But this is just another way to go about it that we believe is a lot quicker. So with that, I'm going to shut this down and we're going to get into tournament management. All right, so I've logged into my account and I've gotten to the Customer Center. As you can see here in the upper right, if I ever click on the Customer Center, it will bring me to this page. And what you'll see here is a lot of boxes. It allow you to create a new event and league, which we'll get to soon. I can also create clone events and leagues that I've already created, which kind of creates that easeability. And then below here are all my categories of events. So we've got a test environment here, our championships, some other leagues and events, and our archive. What's nice about this system is that everything is drag and drop in here. So right now you can't delete any events or leagues, and that's intentional because we recognize that there's a lot of sharing going on. So if there's something that you're doing that you just don't like, you can basically click on it and you can drag it and drop it into your archived. If at some point you guys recognize that you don't want the archives anymore, just let us know and we'll let Golf Genius know that to dump your archive and clear it out if you don't want that anymore. Also on top of that, you see the Add New Category button. This will allow you to create new categories, which are these 4 levels and as many levels as you want. And this is where we are talking about the separation within the clubs. So I would highly advise you guys to create a men's club, a women's club, and so forth for all the different events, so then you can just assign them into your own different buckets and to remove any confusion going forward. So please use this Add New Category button. And then lastly, up top here, these are all on the high level of the account. So in here, we've got some different buttons. Most importantly, we want to talk about is the master roster. So as you can see here, there's many different ways to populate that master roster. You can do it by an import from GIN, which is a good method. You can do it straight from a spreadsheet, which I think is even a better method. And then also you can download it straight from them. If you want to manipulate your master roster, you can download it to a spreadsheet as well, or you can add players just manually to the system. We're not going to go too in-depth in this, but if you have any questions or need help populating your master roster, please reach out to our department. Under customer settings, there's a couple things I want to talk about. First one is Add Reinvite Manager. So for everybody who signed up for this seminar today, you were granted access into the system, and you would be listed under the customer manager for your account. Now, we also recognize that there's maybe some other tournament folks or handicap chair people who are heavily involved in all the events you run in your clubs, and maybe they need access to this as well. This is where you as the administrator can come in here and grant those people access. And it's by simply just entering their name, their email, and hitting save. And what will happen is they will populate as a customer manager and with an invite where they will need to accept and then create an account. Also keep in mind that a customer manager can see everything within the account. Yes, I recognize that if you're part of the men's club and any customer manager can see anything part of the women's club and so forth. But Golf Genius is working on additional tiers of support, password protection. It isn't done yet, but I'm hoping by the end of the year we will be able to create categories and then have them password protected just to create a little bit more separation. Just keep in mind that a customer manager only has access to that. Now, there's one more level that you can take this, is that once you create a league or an event, you have the ability to go into the add and reinvite manager within that league or event and add people who will only have access to that league or event. So just keep in mind that you don't add them as a full customer manager if you only want them attached to that one piece, that event or league. That option is available once you actually start with the creation process. Also in here, you can start working on the course details. Unfortunately, right at this moment, the course rating program is not linked to USGA Tournament Management. I'm sorry, they are working on it. I'm hoping by the middle of the summer it will be done. The part of the problem was that a new course rating program was launched to us, and so all the structure is not in place to interact with that. So it means that you will have to manually create your courses and teas within here. Just keep in mind that once you do it, it's done. You don't have to manipulate anymore unless there's any updates to the course ratings from our department from year to year. So basically, you just add a course. I've got the home course here for ourselves, and then I'm going to hit edit and edit this course. And you'll see in here that all the information associated. So I've got the course name, I've got an abbreviation set up. There's a lot of different information that you can store in here if you want to do pace of play, green depth, hole locations. And then also, here's all my tees. So it's simply by adding a tee down below. For this sake, I've got a black tee and a white tee set up. I've entered all the information I need to, including the ratings, the yardage, the par, the handicap strokes. And then I've done so as well here under for the white. So it's just simply by clicking on each category and a tee and then adding that appropriate information in. Like I said, if you need to add more, just simply add a tee. You can color code them. It's a very easy process. Like this one, I'll just mark that black. That makes sense. And I'll hit save. And then it will successfully save. So just make sure that somebody goes in there and starts populating your golf course or other courses you may be utilizing this event for. The rest of this we won't go into. Just keep in mind that you can maintain scorecards once we get there. Custom fields, you can make as many custom fields in this program as you'd like to manage your data. Logos, banners, and backgrounds. This has more to do with the event portal. Every event and league you create has its own website dedicated to it, and we'll show you that quickly, where you can show people information, you can list your tee times, you can show the results of your events, so a lot of cool stuff that you can do here. And lastly here, you can maintain season points, and basically what it does is that you can connect as many events together and it will tabulate those points all together if that's what you guys like to do, especially for the leagues. We won't go too heavy into that, but it's a cool feature to accumulate season points over the year. So with that, I'm going to go back to the Customer Center and let's start building an event. So I'm going to click on Create New, and I'm just going to call this the Webinar 322, and we're going to get started. You would choose either event or league. We're just going to do an event. So what it does is that it drops you instantly into the wizard. I highly recommend using the wizard. It's a cool tool, and it helps you organize your data initially when you're starting your event. So if you don't want to, you can hit no thanks, but we are going to use the wizard because I highly recommend it. So we're going to hit yes. So now we need to add golfers to our event. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. You can import them from Gen. You can enter them manually. You can also get a spreadsheet template from here where you can download and then populate it and then send it in. But you already saw that we already have a spreadsheet for this event. So what I want to do is that I want to start manually uploading that immediately. So I'm going to choose File. I'm going to pull my player roster. and then I'm going to upload. And so it's going to start thinking, and so now it's seen all the headers of my spreadsheet. Now the cool thing we got to do is now we got to tell tournament management what do these headers mean so that the tournament program knows how to operate going forward. So some of these have already been identified. So index, it matched up with one already called index. Sounds great. Team, team ID, makes sense. T to T, gender to gender. But we have a bunch of other ones that have not been matched up, so we need to do that. So first, well, what's it match up with? First name. So all I do is click on first name, and then I match it. Last, I need last name, perfect, match. Division, do I have something that matches up with division? Well, in this case, I know this is a pro amateur, and that division was set up as pro and am, so we'll use pro and amateur. Club, well, what's this, where is that from? What's that makes the most sense? In this case, affiliation makes sense. What club are they a part of? And will it match? Now lastly, we've got Netskins and dinner. As I look through these common ones, I don't see anything that makes sense. So what I will do is I will leave them alone. What's nice is this program will automatically create custom fields, name these, and put them into the system. So we're ready to now import the spreadsheet. So the program kind of goes through this engine, as you can see here. All depending on how fast your internet is at home, this will move as quickly as possible. You can see there that moved pretty quickly. So now our event roster has been loaded in. We had 20 people on our event roster. We've got 20 people listed here. Now keep in mind that all those pieces of information in that spreadsheet aren't showing up here because these are just the basic pieces of information they're showing. But keep in mind that everything has been loaded in the system. If we had GIN numbers and we were bringing them in, they would have been listed. If we had email addresses, they would have been listed here, and so forth. So what we're going to do is just hit next. So now we got to choose when are we actually playing our rounds. So for the purpose of this example, let's say the event is on Saturday, the 25th. So what I'm going to do is just click on that. What's nice also about this program is that we can build as many rounds into this event as we want to. Let's say you're doing 36 holes on one day, so you have 2 rounds. All you got to do is click on the 25th again. It's going to say, hey, you already have one. Do you want another? I say, yes, I do. Hit OK. Now it turns red. Red means that you have 2 or more rounds available on that day. I can also select another day, so I've got a 3rd round. There's a lot you can do here. But for the purposes of this, we're just going to do 1 round, so I'm going to delete this. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to delete, and we're going to start over and just click on the 25th and hit save. Now it's processing that round into the system. Keep in mind there's a lot of cool tips here on the left-hand side as things are processing. Feel free to read through those. All right, so now we kind of need to get through the calendar event. So it's round 1. You can always click on these blue buttons to change the information. Let's say this is not called round 1, it's called something else. You want to name that round something else. You can click on here and type in as whatever you'd like. Let's say we got the date wrong. You just click on here and change the date. Also, under round type, we were talking about the golf and social aspect. What's nice about this is that because of the reports it has in there, maybe you're doing like a wine and dine, a play and nine, you play and dine. So maybe you're doing a 9-hole event and then you're going to have dinner afterwards because it's a couples event. What's nice about this is that you can set up round 1 as a golf event, but you could also set up a round 2 for the same day, and you can turn this to social. What's great about that is it'll populate the people in there, and then you can print reports on those people without having to build in all the golf stuff that would be involved with that round. So I'm just saying that it has some additional features there that help you organize your events as you go forward. So we'll change that back to golf, and then we'll hit next. All right, the event portal. So one thing that I did forget to talk about is that you need to manage the settings within your event. Within the Customer Center, there is a place to manage your your overriding event profile settings. And within the Customer Center, if you set something up in the profile, it will automatically transfer to every event and league that you create. So what this is doing is saying, hey, I saw what you had in your overriding customer center event, your profile, but do you want to make any changes? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit continue, and I'm going to go through all the sections to see here of what if there's any changes I want to make. So we're running on the same time zone. Do you have multiple divisions, flights, or team groups? This is good. I want these checked because there's some things I want to add in. Display name format. How do I want people to show up on the screen and on our scorecards? Do we want last name just first initial, last first front? So we're going to stick with first and last. But what I'm saying here is that you can change that format however you'd like to. You've also got player separators. So here you can separate people out. This is more for the TV display because sometimes you'll have name and then you need something to separate that name so that you know you're going to the next name. If you're using like last comma first and you choose comma, then it would be name comma name comma name comma. There would be no breaks. So we're just going to stick with the plus sign. We'll go forward. Do we want to access updated information from Jen? Absolutely. What do we want to fetch from Jen? Here we can actually get the current index. We can track their trend. We can do a low handicap index. Let's say that we're running an event and we don't want to pull in their current index, but we wanted to know what the lowest handicap index they had over the last year so that we know that bottom piece. It will do that for you. But for this, we'll just do current handicap index. And then lastly, do you want to post scores? If you do, it will post ESC scores directly to Jen, and you'll just activate that, and that'll create a button for that. We'll leave that alone for right now. All right, so now we'll dive into computing course handicaps. This is critical with section 3-5. We're hoping our department pushes 3-5 of the handicap system heavily, and this is people competing from different teams or men versus women, recognizing that there has to be an adjustment to the course rating for one golfer or not because they're playing from a completely separate tee, but it also means they're playing from basically a completely separate golf course. There has to be adjustments somewhere in there. So keep in mind that when you're setting this up, it defaults to adjust fewest players, which is what you want. Ideally is that you want to explain 3-5 to as few as people as possible. So if you're going to adjust a few, but also keep in mind that depending on what tees are being used, and if they are competing across different tees, that you would like to kind of set up the system where people are only adding strokes to the score and having them removed. As we all recognize, is as soon as you start taking strokes away from people, they're very grumpy and unhappy. So keep in mind how you set this up. Also recognize that if you are using different tees for a competition, that you must, in a net competition, you must use section 3-5. It is mandatory. So just keep that in mind and use this section in here along the way. And then there's a lot of cool other features in here. Rounding up, obviously we certainly would like you to do that per the USGA. What kind of indexes you're using, what kind of event you're doing, where we're just going to do an 18-hole event. A lot of talk if you're doing a 9-hole tournament, how would those calculations work out? Do we have maximums? Well, we recognize that the maximum is 36.4 for men and 40.4 for women. And we'll go forward. Also, how are we setting up our event? Well, in this one, we have them set as teams of 4, so we know that foursomes are going to happen. We also recognize that sometimes people don't show up, so you may have a foursome, but you also have a threesome set in there. So keep in mind here, the system is great where you can manage up to 6-somes in the system, so it will do a lot. But the key here is that whatever you set here is that whatever the maximum amount of people will be in one group, that is what this needs to be set to. Even if you have a bunch of threesomes, but you have one foursomes and you set the threesomes, that foursome will never be able to be created in the system because of this setting here. And then let's go through the last sections here. If you want to automatically set up the tie breaking, there's a lot of different methodologies in here. We'll just set up the USGA, the scorecard playoff. Some of you may be doing point competitions. Here's a way to set up participation points for people just showing up for the event. So they automatically get 2 points because they just showed up. So you can set that up for your events inside here as well. How will your scores be entered? Hole by hole, as 9-hole totals, as 18-hole totals. That can all be sorted out right here. And then lastly, this is unapplicable, so we're all good here. So I'm just going to hit save. And we will move forward. Whoops. Let me go back there. I need to check my golf course. And I'll save that. And then we'll hit next. And then lastly, some settings if you want to do it for your event portal. A lot of this customization actually can be done after the fact. But if you knew that there's certain colors you want with that custom website, you can set these here, logos, banners, but we won't get into that. So we'll just move forward. So now we're at our event dashboard. This is kind of where all the magic happens. So we got our 20 players, as you can see in here. So now we need to start building our event. So you basically got 5 fields up here that kind of manages everything. So within the event tab, this is where you can come back to and adjust any of those profile settings that we just did. You can maintain course details. Well, we've already done that on the higher level at the customer center, so we're good there. There's no more custom fields we needed to. That was taken care of from our spreadsheet. Also look in here that there's a lot of different things. This is where the terminology gets a little different from TPP. So keep in mind that the difference between a multi-round tournament and a multi-round series is this. A multi-round tournament is that, let's say you're doing a 3-day stroke play competition. That would be a multi-round tournament. It's if the format remains the same every round, then it's a multi-round tournament. A multi-round series is where you want to build. It's, let's say you're doing a member guest, and so the first day is best ball, the second day is alternate shot, and the third day is individual stroke play. That's where you would want to do a multi-round series, because that will allow you to add in all of those different formats, those tournaments, into those rounds and accumulate a point total for you. Round robin, many of us are already familiar with, so that you can set that here. And then bracket tournaments. So there's a big difference of terminology in the system, that it's not called match play. There's actually a system in here called match, but you can do them as an 18-hole match where you play every hole a match against somebody. Where bracket is actually setting up full bracket, let's say 16 people brackets, and then doing match play against each other and working all the way down to one champion. So just keep in mind that match and bracket are just used differently in this software. You can also upload loaders, banners, and backgrounds, which would attribute to your event portal or on the TV display, which we'll show you later. You can add in photos in there as your event goes along, so a lot of cool features here. And then also we were back to those managers. So we were talking about customer managers. This is where you can add in an event manager, where you want to bring somebody in who just can only see this event and only can log in and work with it. This is where you would do it. And then making sure they're not set as a customer manager who has access to the entire system and every event within it. So next, moving over, is golfers. So our 20 golfers have already been loaded in, which are right here under our event roster. So here it is again. So if we need to make any changes, we can do so. If we need to bring in more people, we can do so from Gen. We can manually bring people in. We can upload from another roster. So just keep in mind that even though we brought 20 in, we need to bring in more, we can do so from here. Also, we can actually update handicap indexes from here. This is really cool. So we don't have Gen numbers listed in the system, but if we did, we would just simply go to Access Gen for a handicap updates, especially if you are running an event like today and you know it's on April 2nd and you had a revision occur. Maybe you need to do an update because that revision happened. So what's nice about the system is that what it'll do is it'll pull everybody's Gen number and you'll see a massive running log of everybody there, and their name will turn green if it's done an update and what it updated to. And it will go red if there's an issue, and it'll tell you what the issue is so that you can solve it to get the correct information back from Jen. Another thing here is that we can start managing our events, division, flights, and teams. That can all be done here, and so we're going to do that right now. We talked about this being a Pro-Am, and we also had some skins going on, so we need to be able to manage those with division to better organize our event. So what we're going to do here is that this is our overall. So you can see here, there's always one division created called All Golfers, and that's our first 20. And then within those All Golfers, we could create teams, we could flight those teams, we could do groups, we can manage the flighted golfers if we just want to do it on an individual level, or we can edit the name of the All Golfers. So that's where you can do this on the, but we want to create even more layers to our players once we create those tournaments. Because what we're doing here is that we haven't even talked about the forms of competition yet. Keep in mind in TPP, that was one of the very first things you always identified was, what am I playing today? Where in golf, within tournament management, that is the very last piece you do. All we're doing is just getting people into the right spots so that the tournaments will run very smoothly once we get to them. So what we need to do is we need to create some divisions to help us manage our event. Now there's many ways you can do this. You just create a new one. You can manually drop people in there. But we've already done the work up front through that spreadsheet. That's where we're talking about the spreadsheet can help you move things along a lot quicker. So we need to get our pros and amateurs in separate buckets. And we've already got a custom field for that. So I'm going to choose my custom field pro or amateur. And I'm going to hit next. And the system is going to start doing its magic. You can see there the bracket tournaments under the tip of the day. Wonderful. So the system is now broken down my amateur division and my professional division, 5 and 1 and 15 correct. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. Now, we had a net game. Now we recognize that some people wanted to be in the net skins game and some didn't. Well, let's create another division and break those people out. We already had a field within our spreadsheet, so we're going to do net skins, and I'm going to hit next again. All right, perfect. So now we got our in division and our yes division. So 17 people wanted in the game and 3 didn't. Now if somebody say, well, why do you have a no division? Why don't you just delete it? Well, it's good to know that who's not in there. You can also run theoretical events even after the scores have been posted to see who actually kind of the what would have happened division. So you can have fun with this. You can definitely delete it, but if you want to run, what's great about this is once the scores are in, you can even run additional tournaments on top of that that are also theoretical to see what would happen in the long run. It's great that you can do that customization after the fact. So we'll leave these alone. We're not going to create any teams or flights in here. And the main reason is that what I'm going to show you today is that you, in TPP, when you had a team event, you were forced to create teams for it to work properly. Now, you can do that, and for sometimes it makes things easier. But what's great about USGA Tournament Management is that if you set your pairings up properly, you don't need teams because the system will score based on the pairings without the team list actually in play. It will actually save you time. Now, recognize that sometimes you need special reports where those people are tied to specific teams and you want those team names spread out. We recognize that, and that's where you would come into here and actually manage those teamlets and flights. But for today, we're going to stay alone. I will dive in here really quickly, just kind of show you. You would enter a new team name category, the size of the team, and then you would name how you want that populated. And you would basically go through the same functions you did in creating a division. But we're going to leave that alone because I want to show you how you can score based on pairings to kind of change your mindset going forward. So that kind of sums up the golfers section. Also keep in mind on the right side that if we did have emails, we have the ability to email golfers straight from the system, whether that's pairings, the results. The system will do that for you. Also keep in mind that whoever created the event right now will be the person who actually sends the email. There is on a list to kind of create a different sender based on different circumstances. That's not in play yet, but just know that you can email your golfers as you see fit. Also, you can run reports on your division flights and teams here. If those were created, we could run one on divisions because we do have our divisions set up. You could also do some analysis on who's playing together and a lot of other great cool things on course analysis. Hey, who's making birdies? Who's making pars? What's the hardest hole? All of that information is right here at your fingertips. All right, moving over to calendar. So basically, this is if you need to make any changes to the date, add more rounds, you can manage that all in here. We're set. We like it on the 25th of March, so we're good there. So we're going to move right over the rounds. This is where we kind of dive into the meats and potatoes. Now, if we had multiple rounds, this drop down here would list all the rounds within the event. Because we only have one round, we'll just set it to here. And what's great about this program is that it has a checklist. It kind of keeps you on track of where you are in the process of building your event. It's really handy just to make sure that you're not missing anything along in the process. Also, you'll see here a lot of things are grayed out, and that's because there's certain things that have not been put in play yet in order for you to execute them. So there's a lot of things that we need to do first before we even get there. So one thing before we start doing down the spreadsheet is that a lot of times you'll see these eyes here, and what's great, if you hover over them, they'll give you a full explanation about what that function is. So I highly recommend that you utilize these informational tidbits. Okay, so we know who we are. We could do some signups, which is email signups, where people would register to say, yes, I'm in the event, or no, I'm not. It's a cool tool. Some of our clubs have started utilizing this. We're not going to dive into that today because that's more an advanced feature, but just keep in mind that you can do email signups directly, and that is part of the club version, the free version. We don't need to manage our player roster because we've already done that. So the very first thing that we need to do is we need to create pairings. Now there's a number of ways you can create your pairings. For the sake that we're doing is that we've already created teams. And you remember we use the team ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to label who are in those teams, and that's how we will build our pairings, not through the team list, but we're going to do it directly through the pairings. But I also want to point out there's many other ways of creating pairings. What's nice about this automatic scheduling function is that once you click on it, you can start doing it randomly. You can do A, B, C, D, which a lot of you do, by index. Also keep in mind that if you are running multiple rounds within an event, the automatic scheduler has a built-in algorithm to create as much variance and not as much overlap in playing. And the point behind that is that the system is trying to work really hard that everybody has an opportunity to play as many people as they can. Now, we also recognize that there's certain people who love to play with each other, and we know that in some clubs there are certain people that you don't want even close to each other. And so that's where we got these extra tabs up here. So if we were doing a random pairing, but we know that Brett and Brian just have to play with each other, we can actually keep them together, and then they're listed here 1 and 1. So even though if we're doing a random pairing, Brian and Brett would be kept together in this instance. So what we'll do is we'll remove that. Now on the flip side, and maybe the funnier side, is that we recognize that every club has those two people that, for lack of saying, they hate each other. So you maybe have Caleb and Luke just flat out cannot be together. So when you're setting those pairings, you can spread them apart, and under no circumstance when you create your pairings will they ever be tied together in any group. So it's kind of a nice function to kind of alleviate all those concerns in your pairings. But for the sake of today, we already know kind of who we want together because we did that in a spreadsheet. Once again, that prep work that helps move things along a lot quicker. So we're going to create pairings using custom field. And we are going to use team ID. Now also keep in mind here, this function here below, consolidate pairings to use a minimum number of foursomes. We recognize that sometimes your events kind of get scattered, where somebody doesn't show up for whatever reasons. Let's say you had a foursome and 2 people didn't show up, and maybe that happened in another foursome and only 2 people showed up. What's nice about this is that this will automatically take those 2 twosomes and bring them together. It will try to create as few tee times as possible to speed up play. So we'll leave that alone even though we got foursomes in all our groups off our spreadsheet, so we'll build that off the team ID. So all our golfers will continue. All right, so as you can see here, the IDs are listed here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we've got our foursome set. Now, we need to actually start putting some information to that pairings, and that is our course and our times. Now recognize here that these buttons work to kind of move these pairings around. So if we want to swap foursomes, we could just select one and then select another and hit go, and like you see, they're swapped. So there's a lot of cool tools you can do in here. We'll set them back. You could swap players, you could swap pairs, you could create a whole new row, you could add players. Let's say that you add somebody in and they're going to replace somebody because somebody's out of the system. You could do an add and remove. You could also add a blind. Let's say Chase doesn't show up, he's out. So we've got a missing man, but they need a 4th person. So you could randomly pick out of a hat, and let's say Caleb was the person who came out of the hat. You could add a blind, so Caleb in gray would fill in this spot, and his scores would help this team in their total score as well. So you can add those blinds in to help you along the way. But for here, we actually need to start setting up the details of how these pairings are going to work. So the first thing is we're going to set the course and tee. Now, once again, I already did some of that prep work in that spreadsheet, and I had a column called T, and I already assigned who's playing at what tee. So initially, I've got this set up for the black tee, and so what I want to do is that I want to identify everybody who was selected on the black tee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all players, and then I'm just going to identify who was on black. So there you go. It only identifies the pros here. And I want to set them to the black tee. So I'm going to now hit go. And so those people are now set for the blacks. So as you can see here, if you hover over them, they're on the black tee. All of them are. So now I got to get for the other tee. So I'm going to set it to white. Select all players. I'm going to identify the people only white. Those are the other ones. And I'm going to hit go. Perfect. So you can see here, everybody's set up for either the black or white in this pairing. So as I hover over here, you see they're set up for white, and this person's set up for black, and all their pertinent information, their index and the rating they're tied to. Now we need to set up some times or a shotgun. So let's look at shotgun first. We're going to select all, and then we need a starting time. So let's call this 9 a.m. And we'll start with the first hole. And then here is our pattern below. So this shows that we have 5 out of 5 groups, and you can set them on as many holes as you want. If you don't want anybody starting that hole, just leave it at 0. If you want a group to start, two groups to start on the same hole, you would add a 2. Just at the end of the day, make sure that this equals this number at the bottom, and you'll be set to go. So I'll just hit go here. And as you can see here, everybody's set to 9 a.m. off 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can also edit these boxes manually if you would like to. But also you could just do set on regular tee time. So for this, we're just going to hit select all. Once again, everybody was going to, starting time was at 9 a.m. And we're going at intervals of 9 minutes. What's great is a common thing that was funneling around, and we just got notification, is that now you can do staggered intervals. So let's say I want intervals of 8 minutes, and then the second group goes off in 7 minutes. All you do is hit 8,7, and I hit go, and there you go. First group off, next group goes off 8 minutes later, next one goes off 7 minutes later, next group goes off 8 minutes, and then next 7. If you just want one time, leave one digit in there, but just use the comma to break off the staggering, and it will apply it into your groups. So with that, we're all custom, we're ready to go. We're going to save our pairings. And wait a second. Perfect. So they all been saved. Just make sure that box come up and you'll see these all go green. That means you're set to go and your pairings are good. All right, so now you can see we got some check boxes. We're kind of moving along here. And now that we have our pairings created, you can see the remainder of these all became blue, and they were originally grayed out. So another box here is that pairings displayed in Event Portal. Okay, so let's talk about the Event Portal. I haven't even gotten my competition, but I want people to know that we have an event happening. So what I can do here is that I can show my pairings in the Event Portal. Right now it's set to no, but I'm going to turn that on to yes. Perfect, I got a checkbox. So I'm going to quickly go over to Apps in the Event Portal. As you can see here, it has its own custom website for our event, which you can display to anybody. So this is the default page. So when we're talking about backgrounds, logos, all of this information, the gray, this banner up here, can all be swapped out. That is all part of the club version, the free version, and you can doll this up as much as you want. So for the sake of this is that we made T-sheets available. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to click on T-sheets. And there we go. My tee times are now visible to the public. So I can send this information out. Also keep in mind that these T-sheets are locked down to the people that are involved in the tournament. If you want to make all these pages fully public to everybody, make sure to click on Edit and then click on Public Page, and then it'll be viewed by anybody who clicks on the URL above. If you want to make the T-sheet your splash page, meaning when they go to that Event Portal, this is the very first thing they see, you can change that to splash page. I'll go into a few more things on the Event Portal here in a little bit, but I just want to show you that now we've got our T-sheet available to the public for them to see. So I want to go back to my manager site and come back to rounds. So now that we've got our pairings in place, we need to start defining some tournaments. So finally, we've been loading players in, we've been managing our divisions, we've been creating pairings, we created the rounds. We finally got to the point where we actually can now start setting up what in the world we're actually playing today. And so that's where the layers and the flow is very different from TPP. Just keep in mind that there's a reason this is all put together. And so for the sake of this example, what we're going to do today is we're going to do a foursome against the field, and we're going to do a 1 gross, 1 net. We're going to also do a pro scratch, and we're going to do a net skins game, and also a KP on number 5. And we're going to show you how to do all of those. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a tournament, and for every level of competition you do, you need to create a new event, a new tournament for that. So for this one, we're going to do 1 gross, 1 net. This applies only to our all golfers division. What's our format? Well, you can see there's a lot of forms of competition here, but this is just stroke play. This is a foursome versus the field. So remember, we talked about usually, sometimes you automatically think you got to have teams to create a competition. Well, now that our pairings are set by the teams, we don't actually have to have teams in place to actually run this event. Had we had set up by teams, there would have been an additional drop-down box here to actually apply to the teams that have been created. But because we have no teams created, we're just going to do it straight off the pairings. So we're going to do foursome versus the field. Now, well, what competition are we doing here? Well, we just said we're going to do 1 gross, 1 net. So as you can see under the balls, we've got all kinds of competitions here. Best ball, ball selected by hole, ball selected by par, 2 balls on each hole, 3 balls, cha-cha-cha, Lone Ranger. I mean, there's a plethora of games here. There's games in here that I hadn't even heard of before, and probably an East Coast thing. But regardless of that, is that what's cool about this is that we've now got an advanced option. And this is where tournament management can get really fun. And that there's those competitions you always said, geez, I always wish it could do in TPP. Well, now it probably can do it in tournament management. And this is where you can actually add rules for that competition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Add Rule. And what's great about this is that I can add up to 18 rules in here, because if I wanted to, I could add a rule for every hole if I wanted to, if I wanted to get that complicated. I'm not going to. I'm just going to select checked all, because I'm going to just write one rule. And then I'm going to say, hey, how are the balls being applied? Well, I only want the ball to be counted once, not more than once, so I'm going to leave that alone. And then how do we identify the balls being used? We mean by index, by the position on the scorecard. Well, I just want strictly the best ball out of the group, so I'm just going to identify it by score. And so before I get too far, I need to name it as well, so I'll call it 1 gross, 1 net. And then I need to set the rules. Well, we talked about we want 1 gross, 1 net, so I want the best gross, and I want the best net. So there you go. I now have the capability. So we've always heard from pros saying, hey, I got this pro-am game going on and I want 2 nets, 1 gross. Well, you can now do it, because in this case, if that case was the case, you would do 1 gross, the best gross, and then that would be the best, and then second bet, net, and that's how you get 2 net, 1 gross. So there's a lot of customization in here going forward. So I'm going to hit done, and there you go. My rule is set for all 18 holes. So keep in mind that if I wanted to do it for just the front 9 and do another game on the back 9, I would create a second rule for those other games. Also, in the twosomes game stuff, for those who love to do 666, it already is in here. So it's really easy, and you'll find that all within the tutorials. So we've got our 1 gross, 1 net set up. So now we got to figure out handicaps. Okay, well, I just want to use a regular USGA net. As you can see, there's a lot of other things here, gross, off the lowest, and some other Callaway games, Peoria, but we just want a straight net game. If it's just straight net, and you know that it's a simple percentage across the board to everybody, you can adjust this percentage here. Now, also keep in mind there are more handicap options available. So you can calculate based on course handicap, which we recommend. Sometimes you want to use index course handicap, not advisable. We already know what the maximum is. We already know. And then also we can apply an allowance here. If you do apply an allowance under the more advanced handicap options, just keep in mind that on this main screen that you leave it at 100% and you change it here. And the reason I say that is you set 90% here and you set 90% on the front, it's actually going to change it to 81% because it's going to take 90 of 90. So just keep that in mind. Also, for those who like to do ranges, especially if you're doing a best ball and you've got an 8-stroke limit difference, and then based on the best ball, if you're outside of that limit, you apply the additional 10% as recommended by the USGA, you can do that. So if I want to do a maximum range here, I could and set the amount of strokes. That's all just done within the advanced feature. If you don't want to allow strokes on a par 3 hole, you could do that here. How do you want to calculate course handicap? Do you want to do it based on hole number, which the USGA recommends, or you want to do it based on half strokes? Hey, I've even been to events where they want to break it down to 1/10 of a stroke, 100th of a stroke, just to make sure that there are no ties. You can do that here as well. So we're just going to go done. So our settings are done, and then we're going to do, like I said, 100% of net. Maybe you want to drop the worst hole. So you're playing an 8-hole event and the 2 worst holes are just kicked out the door. You could set that up here. Our tie breaking, lots of tiebreakers built in here. The USGA method of scorecard playoff from last 9, 6, 3, and 1, we've got it already manual set, but as you can see, there's other ways of doing it. Maybe you want to manage a cut line. That's for like a big stroke play competition. You can do that. And then we come in here in person points. So as we were talking about, sometimes there's a purse set up, but maybe there's like a season-long competition of points. We can manage all of that within our tournaments. So we're going to set the first, second, ninth. So you can set as many places you want. If you needed more than 10, you would just click on more. But for the simplistic sake, let's just say the purse is 100, 50, and 25. And we'll leave the points alone if you want to do points. Also, something I want to allude to you is that you could save this in your tournament library. If you're building a tournament format that you use over and over and over, what I recommend you do is you save it into your library. And what I mean by that is that that specific format will be stored away that you could keep coming back to, where you don't have to recreate the wheel and put all of this together. All you do is pull it from your tournament library, throw it into your event, and you're set to go. So we're all about doing the work up front and then trying to, for that easeability down the road. That's why there's a lot of libraries and cloning set up in the system, because we're trying to cut down on that load of recreating the wheel like we did in TPP a lot. That's what's great about this program going forward. So if you could save it in the library, and let's say you're doing a lot of future rounds and want this tournament format in there, it will auto-populate in here if you click on this button as well. I'm not going to save this in the library. I'm just going to hit save. And perfect. We got our first competition set in there, our first tournament for our one gross, one net. So now we said, hey, we're having a pro scratch game. Well, we got to add that tournament in there. So this is where we're talking about layers. You can add as many competitions you want there, and it will calculate all of them at once. You don't have to do separate events for them. So we'll just call this Pro Scratch. Now this is where we're talking about breaking layers of people where they should belong and to create easeability in creating your events. So in this one, it's a Pro Scratch game. So all I care about is people within the professional division. That's why we set up these divisions beforehand, to create those divisions of people way in advance to help you make these easier decision. So once again, stroke competition. It's player versus the field, own ball, 18 holes, perfect. Not net. This is a gross competition. We'll leave the rest alone, and because there's only 5 people, winner takes $100, and we'll hit save. All right. Now we need one more competition. We talked about we were going to do a skins game, a net skins game. So we'll call this net skins. And once again, that's why we created these divisions. Yes, I only want my Y division because these are the people who said they wanted to be in skins day. So here we go. So now we got to change up our format. We want basic skins. Now with the skins game, you can do all kinds of variants here. We want just player versus the field. We want everybody involved, their own ball over the 18 holes. Do you want skins to carry? Yes or no? We're going to say no. To win a skin, you must have a score par or better, eagle or better, birdie or better. You can set those variants here. In this, we'll just say any score works. You can set up validation. If you win a skin, you got to validate on the next hole. So you can just even make it tougher on your buddies if you want to. And then lastly, we want to set it up on net. But once again, you can set up any handicap parameters, but we just leave it alone as net at 100%. And then lastly, how do you want these distributed? Do you want to award a certain amount to every skin awarded? A lot of people just have a pot, so we recommend doing pro rata. And let's say there's $100 in the pot. And then that will be evenly divided over who wins the skins. And we'll hit save. All right, so now we've got all our tournaments set up. Now, we also talked about having a KP. So now the system under Add User Score Tournament allows you to add those manual features into the tournaments, which is great, and you can have fun with this. So we already said we're on KP on the 5th hole, so we'll do KP number 5. And who do you want to award these to? Individuals, pairs, threes and foursomes, teams? Well, this is just an individual award. We'll keep it at individuals, and we'll just hit save. Great, now we have a KP set up for number 5 that we can add in, and it will be displayed on the leaderboard once we get there. Lastly is right here in the middle, link existing tournaments and aggregate tournaments. This is kind of getting into the series where you may have different events and you want to see an aggregate event. Maybe, like I said, you're doing a member guess and you've got these 3 different competitions going on, but you want to see the overall result happen. That's where you would use link existing tournaments and into an aggregate tournament, and this would give you that that aggregate result that you're looking for across different formats. One thing before we move on here that I forgot to talk about is that many of you, when you're doing purses and points, like to have biases where you have a gross versus a net bias, where it will automatically give more money to however you place within that. If I go back to my Pro Scratch game here, I'll show this really quickly. That if I set this to net, is that right here, if I'm doing a net competition, I can do a gross bias, net bias, and so what will happen is that even though it's calculated based on net, it will actually run a net and gross competition at the same time, and it will be visible, and then it will award based on the person points that you've set up pre-hand, and it will set the bias based on what you do here. So just keep in mind that a lot of you do biases and you run gross and net side by side. This is an easier way of doing it instead of having to create multiple tournaments. Now, keep in mind that this is being worked on, but this will only work for scratch for stroke events. If you have a more advanced game, let's say a Stableford or some other games, that bias does not exist at this moment. So just keep that in mind. So if you run into that situation, you will have to create a tournament for the net side, and you'll have to create a tournament on the gross side. And then what will have to happen is, in order to create that bias, let's say you're doing a Stableford, you will actually have to link them, and then there's an advanced feature within and once you click on this button, that will allow you to create a bias between the 2 events that you just linked. So just keep in mind that if it's a stroke play event, no problem, set the bias. If you're doing something more complicated, you'll have to set that bias within the link existing tournaments. All right. So now that we got our tournaments in play, we're moving along nicely here. We now need scorecards. So we're going to now go to print scorecards. Now there's a lot of nice, cool functionalities going on within here. So we got to select a tournament for this. We're going to do the 1 gross, 1 net. So we want all of these groups as part of these scorecards. Also keep in mind here, if you want to print some blank scorecards, you can add as many you want to into your PDF by clicking here. So let's quickly go through the formats here. So here you can set your scorecard up as however you'd like to. Recognize that down here, it kind of gives you a preview. What kind of card do you want? You want a 9-hole card? You want an 18-hole card? How do you want the size to be? Do you want margins? How many cards do you want to a page? Most people do two scorecards per page. How do you want the people to show up? Do you want to see every player? If I had teams, you would have a team option here. How many players do I want to show up on one scorecard? Well, I want the whole foursome on here, but you can limit to 1. If it was a stroke play competition, you would want 1 player per scorecard because you want to do a championship card. You would set that here as well. Also, your headers. How many lines of headers do you want here? What's great about these is that you can move these left justify, right justify. If you click inside here, you have all of these data sources that you can dump in there to identify what you want on your scorecard. So also keep in mind that these the percentage signs are what identifies the data, but you could also type in, let's just say name. This was now put on the scorecard, name, colon, and then the league name would show up out of the system. So a lot of customization you can do here. And then also we've got, you know, the two T's listed, black and white, and all the pertinent par and handicaps. So that's all looking good. So now let's go to handicap stroking. Well, what do I want to show? Well, in this example, do I want dots or no dots? So I can take them off the card, I can leave them on the card. Do I want total handicaps on the side to show? I can leave them or leave them on, take them off. Also, additional information. What else do I want on my card? Do I want and add a whole nother row? So this was a team competition, so maybe I want a row in there. So I just added a brand new row, and maybe I'll call this team score. And what's great about these rows can be dragged and dropped and moved all over the place. So you can set these up however you like to. It's very easy. Also, what do I want inside of here? Do I want slashes? Kind of looks funny. It's kind of crowded. Do I want to, if you were doing a shotgun, you could highlight the starting hole. If I was using pace of play within the course details, I could indicate pace of play inside the scorecard. What T's do I want listed on the scorecard? Well, I want both because I've got two groups of people out there. So also, here's a custom area. I'd be like, have fun today. I mean, you can add as much information you want here. You can make this box bigger, smaller. So a lot of different things you can do inside of here. Logos. So you can add in logos into the system. Now, right now, unfortunately, I don't have any logos built in the system, but had I had some, logos would replace this logo, which can be on each side. And then there's also the ability to add in watermarks, which would label right here in the middle of each side of the card if you like them. And what's great about it is you can adjust the size. See, you can adjust sizes. Also, the opacity you could adjust. So if you want it brighter or you want it very dim in the background, you can go, basically you can go nuts with these logos and sizes within here. And you would load those all in at the very beginning, as we talked about here under the logos, banners, and backgrounds. All right, and then lastly, we can do fonts and colors. So what we'll do here is that we will, see everything has a checkbox. So we can adjust size, color, you can do basically whatever you'd like with the card. So the name, this is too small, so I want this much bigger, and I want it in bold, and I want it in red. And these boxes are too small, so I'm going to check. So just make sure you uncheck where you left off to make sure when you're making an adjustment. And I want the row height higher, so I want these bigger boxes. So there you go. So now I got bigger boxes just for these to type in your scores in. I can also, if you're doing a 666, I could highlight holes. So let's see here. Maybe there's like our KP hole. We just want to highlight the KP hole. So I just want the 5th hole. Everybody remember that this is the KP hole. So I'm going to highlight those. So just keep in mind that you can do a lot with these boxes, and you can start adding text in there and having a lot of fun with the scorecards. And then the last thing I want to show about scorecards is that down here in the library, you spent all this time building these scorecards, you might as well not recreate the wheel again. So what you can do is that you can save them in your library and then come back to them if you're doing an event that's using the same format, so that you don't have to recreate the scorecard and it will automatically show up on your screen for the event. So we like this. We will hit save and print. Let it process. Like I said, all the document preparation really goes down to, it's pretty quick, comes down to internet speed. The whole system is very scalable, so you'll keep up. So we'll hit download PDF, and there we go. So our highlighted columns there, all our different teams are listed, 5 teams, and we bolded our name a little bit bigger. So everything will always go into a PDF, so you can always just print straight from there. Also, keep in mind that a lot of you use buy stock 404 or 405 scorecards from us from the USGA. This system will absolutely use them. We've already done a bunch of testing with them, and they line up just fine. So if you want to continue to buy scorecards from us, please do so. They will work in this system just fine. All right, so we've done some scorecards. So now I'm going to go do this pre-play audit. This is a great tool that allows you to basically double check your work just to make sure that there's nothing out of ordinary before you start posting scores and nothing's weird. So we got 4 green boxes is exactly what we want to see, so we passed. So we can move on from there. Now, before we start entering scores, I'm going to show you a really cool tool that, frankly, from our department may be the coolest thing ever, and that's the handicap analysis. For a lot of you, you've probably been to a competition where, you know, 3-5's in play, and a lot of things are, there's adjustments to your handicaps, and somebody comes up to you saying, how in the world did I end up at that course handicap? I'm this and this, and I don't know how I got there. What's great about this is that for every competition you set up, whether it has adjustments or not, it will actually computate and show you in words how it got there. So you can go to this handicap analysis and show people exactly how you got to where you got. So let's take an example here of Luke Davis, who has a 0 index, but for the purposes of competition, he is a 5, saying, hey, what happened? So if I click on Luke, it'll say, hey, I'm an index of 0. I'm playing from the black tees. I have a rating of 74.5 with a slope of 137. You do the calculation. After all of that, I equal to 0. But because we're using 3-5, which is appropriate because it's in that competition, there is a difference in ratings of 4.6 strokes between the black and white tees, which rounds to 5. So in this case, because he's playing the farther back tee, he gets 5 additional strokes. So that's why his course handicap became 5. So this is a great tool. It breaks it down word for word exactly how they ended up at their stroke. So I highly recommend that you take people here to explain how they got there, because frankly, it will remove some of the bickering about how in the world they got there. So use it as a tool. It's fantastic. Also keep in mind that if you absolutely have to adjust the course handicap, you can do that in here, and you'll set it in here, and you have the ability to clear it out if necessary. All right, so now we're ready to start a competition and actually enter some scores. So we'll go to enter scores. So what you can do here is you can click on a group and just really start just plugging away. Simple as that. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to clear these scores out. And keep in mind that whatever you enter in here, never enter in net, always enter in gross scores. Let the tournament do the work for you. You set all that things up, let it do the computation for you. So what's nice about this, especially for all of you that are getting started and want to do some test events, use the random scores. It will randomly populate all the scores up into the holes and give you instant results to look at the leaderboard. So I'll let it computate. And perfect. So now we got the competitions for all our events. So let's look at the gross and net. There you go. So keep in mind these are all fictitious scores, but 33 under par. They just blew it out of the ballpark. So they won the $100 and they win the competition. I can also drill down in each of their scorecards by just clicking, and you can see where they scored everything. So remember, it was a 1 gross, 1 net. So let's verify that that's correct. So in this competition, they used the best gross, so it would probably be this person 3, and this person was a net 2 equals 5. So that's perfect. 1 gross net, where it worked perfectly how we want it to. So that kind of shows you how that works. And let's look at our pro scratch game, which is just a straight up gross competition. So there you go. Brian Ham shot 6 over par in 78. He wins the $100. Now let's look at our net skins division. Here we go. Here's all the skins that were won today. So this person won 2 skins, which within the purse, all the skins ended up being $16.67. He wins 2, so he got $33 and change. And it shows you exactly how it worked. He got a birdie on 4 to win one, and he did a net 1 on 16 to win the other one. So it does a full breakdown for you. Now we also had a KP on 5. So we need to enter those rows. Remember, it's a manual function, so we have to actually figure out, all the sticks came in, so we actually need to figure out who won it. So let's say Chad Jones won it. So what we'll do is we'll go to position, and we'll just type that first, and purse, and let's say he gets 25 bucks. Let's go back, $25 for the purse. And details. Hit it 3 feet 2 inches from the hole, missed the putt. So have fun with this. All right, that's really the point of this. So we can save that, there you go, and then we'll recalculate the positions. And there you go, Chad Jones moves up to the front, first position, make $25. So there you go, all our competitions are out there. If there is some manual adjustments that need to be done, you can come up here and you can rescore the leaderboard if necessary. You can actually adjust the leaderboard. So let's say the payouts need to be adjusted. You can come in here and actually manually adjust any details or positions if you need to. So I'm just going to say done adjusting. I can see the live leaderboard, which we're going to get to in just a second. We can go into the TV display. Once again, I'll get there in a second here as well. So let's go into the live leaderboard. And that's a good point. We haven't displayed them. So I'm going to go back to my rounds, and I want my results on the event portal, so I'll turn that on. And we've already seen our display leaderboard, which we just looked through. So we've gotten through the real bulk of this event. So before we get to the event portal, kind of finish things up, we're going to go into the download print center. This is where you're going to get all your printed materials, whether it's a leaderboard, some team reports, your T-sheet, your alpha list, your alpha T list. You can print scorecards from here. You can print cart signs. In the page composer, you can actually modify your cart signs and make them in pretty. The report composer, which allows you to do custom reports, is getting stronger every day. They just did their second release in here. Let me say it's getting better. All of these can be edited. As you can see, they're slowly starting to add some more custom reports in here, and you can edit and create as many copies as you want. But just keep in mind that this is something they are working on consistently. So it's not super big right now, but trust me that there will be more custom reports than you can imagine here, and be able to modify it as necessary going forward. Just give it some months here, and like I said, there'll be many more releases coming shortly. So just keep in mind that you can do a lot in the custom center. You can print leaderboards. You can print the big leaderboards if you have a plotter. You can actually print a standard one, or you can go to Kinko's and print off a huge leaderboard if you want to. You can also dump it into Publisher and modify those big leaderboards as you want to. But we now live in a digital world, and so we've kind of pushed people to use the event portal and use the TV display to really get that message out. We're pushing people that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip over to the apps, and we're going to go into the event portal. So now we saw our T-sheet, but now our results are live because we turned them on. So we want to see the actual results of the event. So 1 gross, 1 net. There we go. I want to see skins. Perfect. So now all of this, and now KP fifth. There you go. Chad Jones won $25. $25. He was 3 feet 2 feet from the hole. He missed the putt. So all that information is now out there. There's a lot of ways we talked about, adding social analytics, how people played out there. A lot of customization that can be done through the general portal settings and these edit buttons. So I would just suggest that you kind of play with that. Give us a call if you need any help. But I also want to talk about the TV display. Many of you have big TVs in your clubhouse now, maybe a smart TV. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can plug your computer into the TV. Maybe you could do Chromecast. Maybe you have a smart TV that already has an internet app built into it. So right here, this blue screen will populate, and you can adjust the information as much as you want. Font size, so they're getting bigger. How fast do you want things to scroll? Do you want a top margin moving? Do you want the bottom? The width? How much display space you want here? What rounds do you want listed? Do I want to list a banner? If I had a banner listed here, it would be nice and pretty up here. I could do a background. We have a full background page here. Like I said, there's a lot of things that you can show in here. Also, manage pages. So these are all the 5 events we had. If you don't want any of these to show up, just click on settings and make it not visible. Close that. And maybe I don't even want to show my Pro Scratch, or I'll just close that. And I don't want to show my KP. We'll get rid of that. So I'm only showing these 2 events. So I'll hit save, and there you go. I've only got this. And then once on this blue screen, if you pull away, you'll now have the whole results just scrolling constantly as the events are fully updated with the results. So the key here is that just have fun with the TV display. We want people to utilize it in your own environment. I think it's a cool way for while people are eating lunch after getting off the golf course to see how things are going. Keep in mind with the TV display with the club version is that it's not in real time. That's a premium option. So once you publish those events, those results, they will show up on the TV display for everybody to see. And I'm going to back up and go back to our return management. I'm pretty much done here. A lot of cool things. The last thing I want to show, a lot of people are saying, hey, how did the skins work? What's really cool here is I can actually print a leaderboard. I can do a hole-by-hole results, and it will actually do a full breakdown of the skins. So somebody's saying, hey, I'm pretty certain I want a skin here because I went super low. This will actually show you a full report to say, hey, somebody actually beat you here. So it's just a good document to know going forward if you have somebody questioning the results here. This is a pretty big document. That's why it's taking a second here. But as I dive in here, I'll scroll down here to the skins, and here's the skins. It breaks down each individual and who won the skins. So it's just a great tool to actually analyze how the game went. Here's our contact information.